This podcast is scheduled for one fall.
Whoa, who let you out of the basement? Let me do this. This podcast is scheduled for one fall, and I'm still not reading any of this other crap you wrote, so just click your buttons and start the show.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Gimmick Table. I'm your host, Matt, and sitting across from me, the reason that you've all petitioned for us not to include video in the podcast. Folks, he is the beast to my beauty. He is Bats. How goes it today, my good friend?
Well, aren't you just the belle of the ball?
Why do you think that is an appropriate response to that?
Her name's Belle.
I gotta start giving you stuff at the beginning of the show. Did you even know who's
No one
Did you even
drinks
know-
like Gaston. No one thinks like Gaston.
Did you even know who today's guest was?
Papa Hales, yo.
You remembered that?
Oh, yeah.
We're making progress, people.
How could I forget? I've been advocating for you to get him on since episode 7.
Yeah, but it made more sense now, getting closer to the tournament. So there's a method to my madness.
Yeah, I
Settle
understand
down.
your whole marketing genius. Whatever.
I know, thank you.
Yeah.
I took a bow for everybody who couldn't see that because we can't have video because of your face.
For
And
everyone who can't see it, Matt is dressed like the most hipster vegan you could be.
And while you're listening to the show, guys, I'm going to completely ignore him and tell you about our contest right now. All you got to do is go to gimmicktablepod.com/contest. Get your chance to win a $30 gift card on us to prowrestlingtees.com just for supporting our friends at the 607 Strong Academy. That's Binghamton's own pro wrestling school. And not only do we have a great school right here in Binghamton, we're fortunate enough to have a great promotion in Excite Wrestling, and they're going to be returning on March 2nd. The American Legion Post 80. You can get your tickets to that show at excitewrestling.com/shop. But if you can't make the show, not from the area, you can catch it live on Twitch at 7 p.m. That's twitch.tv/excitewrestling.
And if you happen to stop by Wegmans that day during the afternoon, you might see me there.
That's what they're going to do. Hey, let me not go to the wrestling show. Let me go see this guy.
No, it's
Wegmans.
earlier in the afternoon. It's way before the show. I mean, maybe
Instead of
they
going
want
to
to
the
come see
wrestling
me.
show, why are you trying to...
If you're a fan of me and you're in the Binghamton area.
We have a show to do, guys. It's a very special show today, so before we get into an argument here on the air, we got to keep focused. We're going to be discussing the Making Towns Classic today with our guests, so please join us in welcoming to the Gimmick Table, Papa Hales. How goes it today?
It goes really good. Goes great. Glad to be talking to you.
That's good to hear. We're definitely glad to finally have you on the show. And we're really glad that we can be sponsors of the Making Towns Classic. And also, I want to say thank you for all your support since we started the show. It really helped boost our confidence in doing this and kind of helped lead us in the right direction, because you're definitely one of the good guys out there when it comes to supporting people and what they love to do.
Oh, thank you.
Now, before we get into kind of talking about the tournament and everything, you obviously have a huge love for professional wrestling. So how did that infatuation begin? How did you become a fan?
Well, that's a really good question. I've talked about this some in the past, trying to bring a little bit more into focus. I actually was born in Minnesota, and when I was very little, my father would take me to wrestling shows up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities area, and also my grandfather, my mom's dad knew a lot of professional wrestlers, especially in that area, in the Minneapolis area, and also in Japan. So when I was very young, and I'm talking about, 3, 4 years old, they took me to shows and whatnot up there. But I honestly don't have a memory of that. It's almost too early for me to remember. My earliest definitive memories of wrestling are in the late 1950s in Albuquerque, which is where I grew up and went to high school. I used to watch Amarillo Territory wrestling because Albuquerque was a satellite of Amarillo Territory under Dory Funk Sr. Mike London was a local promoter. So my father would take us on occasion to go to wrestling there in Albuquerque. And also we went to other areas in the New Mexico and West Texas area to watch wrestling. And I really fell in love with that Amarillo Territory wrestling, as I said, was run by Dory Funk Sr. And my first actual hero in wrestling was a guy named Rapid Ricky Romero. And he was the big baby face in the Albuquerque territory. He was brought in from California out into that West Texas and New Mexico region by Dory Funk Sr. back in the late 50s or early 60s. And he's the guy that really got me totally turned on and invested in wrestling. remember was in 1959. I remember clearly because Dory Funk Sr. was on that card, and the Fabulous Kangaroos, the original Fabulous Kangaroos, were on that card. So I remember it well. I went with my dad and my brother David. So that was kind of the beginning of my memories of wrestling, was late 50s and early 60s in Albuquerque.
That love has really stayed. I mean, if you look at when you began watching it and where wrestling is now, it's completely evolved into something different but still amazing. And there was never any requirement for you to get involved and support it. So why do you choose to support wrestling in the way that you do?
It became a passion of mine. I was very interested in it from the time I was a kid. As I said, the Amarillo territory is when I really fell in love with it. And then later, in 1969, I moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and became very much invested in Memphis wrestling because Chattanooga is part of the Memphis territory tradition. It was at that time. And then later we had Atlanta wrestling come in with Gordon Solsey and TBS Superstation, and also was influenced by Jim Crockett Promotions, and all of that kind of was in the area of Chattanooga. So that continued that tradition of territory wrestling that we were really interested in, my brother and I especially. And then I got caught into life because I got married in 1973 and was still watching wrestling and following it occasionally and going to some shows. But once I started a family in the 80s, I got caught up in life. And I was a teacher, taught high school for many, many years, and coached for many, many years. I coached soccer, wrestling, and football. And I always maintained that interest in professional wrestling. I watched a ton of it on TV. My son Dylan was very, very much interested in it, and my other boys as well. And he was one of what I call the original tape traders. So he would trade, and he had all these contacts and whatnot all over the place. So he was watching and viewing all kinds of wrestling that I wasn't even aware of. At the time when he was going to many more shows than I was, because I'm busy working, too busy coaching, too busy trying to keep my kids fed, I wasn't able to go to shows like I can go now. But it's been such a huge part of my overall journey. I like to say it saved my life many times because life is difficult when you're bringing up 4 kids, when you're trying to fight those financial woes and working hard. I worked many, many jobs before I became a teacher. I think at one point I was doing, I had a paper route early in the morning. I was scrubbing floors late at night to earn extra income. So there were a lot of different odd jobs and whatnot I did before I got certified and began my teaching career. So there was a kind of a big in the middle when I was always loved wrestling, but I wasn't having that opportunity to go out and see it as much because I was just living my life. But I had to retire from teaching about 3 years ago because I had a serious heart condition, and I had to have open heart surgery, and my eyes were failing because of diabetes. So I kind of suddenly had to retire at age 62, and because teaching and coaching and spending time with kids had been such a huge part of my life, it was very difficult for me. I missed the kids so much. I didn't miss the crap because there's so much junk and BS in teaching. I didn't miss that. I didn't miss the paperwork and the dealing with the foolishness, but I missed the kids. So when I was unable to teach anymore, it put me into a pretty deep depression. But wrestling, again, pulled me out of it, as it has pulled me out many times in my life over things that have been difficult and hard to deal with. Because to me, wrestling is really the perfect, it draws you into a physical activity, but it's also storytelling. It's art, and it's something that can serve people well when they need something to help enrich their lives and make their lives better. So when I was unable to work for such a long time and sitting at home, I began to watch more and more wrestling. And then I got to the point where I was able to get around after my surgery to go watch more live events, many more than I had seen for many years. And I fell in love with it very much all over again, although, as I said, it had never left me. And as I began to see more and more shows, and I began to see the commitment of the wrestlers and see the fan interest, it just kindled a fire within me, and I began to reach out to people on social media saying, hey, this is great, this person is great, I love this is, and I try to be a positive force, but that's just kind of my story.
And you can definitely see it. I do follow you on Twitter, and I have seen how positive you are with everybody in the community who is positive. And to the same sentiment, we've talked about it on the show before, when you see people at wrestling shows, every person there has something going on in their life, but at least for that 4 hours, they can escape from all of that and just enjoy the moment. You're not alone in that sentiment that, wrestling has saved your life. I think there's a lot of people out there who feel that way.
Yes, and I think it's a diversion that people can utilize more positive force, and that's what I've tried to let it do to me. It is a diversion, and it is something I enjoy immensely. But I realize, of course, it is a performance. But there's something going in that ring with those moves, and there's an interaction between those individuals and me as a fan, and me and the other fans. There's something going on that makes it worthwhile, that fills some of those empty spots that we have in our lives.
Exactly, and you can take that away with you. There's a lot of things you can do with your time to fill those voids. There's a lot of negative things you can do, but you can't walk away with them taking away something positive. You can have a really good time at a wrestling show, and it might put you in a better mood, and that might reach you out further in your own life, like it did for you, and got you involved in doing things like, the Making Towns Classic, opposed to where other things are just going to lead you down a dark road.
Like anything else, there's an opportunity to see good in something, or there's an opportunity to dwell on what's bad in something. And there certainly are things in wrestling that are not good. There are things in wrestling that need to be addressed and need to be improved. It needs to be a community that's open to everyone. I submit that professional wrestling should be open to everybody. I don't care what your religion or race or, what your sexual identity is, or what whether you're a male or a female. Everyone should feel welcome. Everyone should feel safe. Everyone should feel part of that performance.
I feel like some of the same struggles you're talking about with wrestling there have to do with teaching as well, like that whole education system.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And speaking on that, we're looking at 2018, and you have some fans out there when it comes to women's wrestling that don't believe it's as good as men, that don't believe that they should be doing that. Now, you, myself, and a lot of other people have seen proof out there and what they're doing out there that does not prove that statement correct. And there's a lot of women out there that are just as good as the men. Why do you feel that there's so many fans that aren't willing to accept that yet?
Well, I think that comes from the fact that men essentially have had all the power. They've had all the control, and historically, that's a position of strength. And no one ever likes to give up power. No one ever likes to give up what they think is good or their concept of what something should be. Now, we all recognize that women and men are different in some ways, but wrestling essentially is performance art to me. And I am judging a wrestling match not by the genders of those involved. I'm judging it by whether there's a great story that's told, whether there's great characters, whether there's selling, whether there's striking, whether there's the right kind of movement, whether there's connecting with the audience. I'm not looking at their genders. And to me, women are just as good as men. If professional wrestling is based on what it is, which performance or people, as I said, don't want to give up power if they're in power, and they want to hold on to traditions or opinions that may or may not be valid. My answer to a lot of the criticism of women's wrestling is I understand that you may not like it as well as certain men's wrestling. I get that. There are some people that love women's wrestling and they don't care at all for men's wrestling. So that's an aspect of this too. But all I say is judge wrestling on the performance of the individuals involved. Don't look at somebody's gender. Don't look at their race. Look at what they are doing in that ring to tell a story and how they're bringing you into that story. Is it believable? Can you invest? Are you invested in what they are doing? I've seen some fantastic matches involving women just in the past month. I thought the Women's Rumble was brilliantly done. The way that it was constructed is as good as any match I've seen for a Rumble match, the Women's Royal Rumble. I thought the match recently between Sasha and Asuka is one of the best TV matches you'll ever see. I was literally standing up watching the entire thing and living. And I've seen some incredible matches live, both between two women performers and and intergender matches. I saw an intergender match between Fred Yehai and Jordan Grace at Nova Pro Wrestling in Virginia that blew me away. It was incredible. So what I say to people that have doubts is get out there and watch these performers and make up your mind based on what you have seen, your own experiences live in watching these wrestlers or on TV or wherever. Don't just hear what someone says, women's wrestling is no good, men's wrestling is no good. Make up your own mind, but don't make your mind up until you've watched it and you've really committed yourself to finding out what it's all about.
I completely agree with that 100%. I think a lot of the problem is like you said, people are used to something, and for so long it hasn't been in the spotlight like it is now. And we're really getting to see that women can perform just as well as men. They're just as athletic. Hands down, any woman in professional wrestling is 10 times more athletic than anybody sitting at this table, including myself. So,
I agree.
They can do things that I can't even dream of doing. So I can't understand why anybody would not give them the opportunity to at least watch a match. Watch the story. See if you enjoy it. Because if you don't, you might be missing out on something that you genuinely enjoy and love. And the only one that loses out there is you.
Like you said before, intergender matches, like those can be some really fun matches to watch. And a lot of people get on that, like, oh, women can't wrestle men and everything.
Not only that, you smaller wrestlers wrestle larger wrestlers all the time, even all the way to WWE, and that's always been accepted. Look at Daniel Bryan. Look at all the huge guys that he was wrestling all those years. Even now, look at in NXT, we got Johnny Gargano coming out now, and I'm hoping that eventually Johnny gets into the WWE, and he'll probably be facing off against somebody like Braun Strowman.
And it would work.
Now, you would have to suspend belief to think that just in a street fight out on the corner that Johnny could beat Braun Strowman simply because there's such a huge size differential. But in wrestling, it's a story, and it is performance art, and he's not held back by his size in that, and I don't think a woman should be either. So we've all got to think broader about what wrestling is all about. And there's a larger issue with women that is just purely economic, and it's just purely common sense. The fact is, women are more than half of the population, and you cannot expect wrestling, especially independent wrestling, to thrive without the support of women at every single level, as fans, as writers, as journalists, as performers in the ring, as referees, as promotion owners, as people that are booking matches and telling stories. Women need to be more and more and more involved. In fact, independent wrestling needs them in order to survive. That's just common sense.
Even the WWE is recognizing that now, obviously. So look at everybody. Sasha, Bayley, Alexa Bliss, those girls have made a whole generation of younger girls wrestling fans. And that's crazy to think about. They weren't even tapping into that 5-10 years ago.
Well, I think they finally started to turn the corner. Of course, there's a million miles to go. But, women's wrestling has come a million miles, but there's still a million miles to go. And I would readily agree that there's not near as many women performers out there as there are male performers. That's just a matter of fact. But I can tell you this, in the last years, the number of good, solid, excellent, extremely good women performers is improving at an astronomical rate. There's more and more and more wonderful female wrestlers out there, and I think it's time for people to recognize it.
Absolutely, and you're going to be giving them that opportunity on May 12th at the Making Towns Classic. So tell us, how did that whole idea begin?
That's a good question. I've never promoted an event before. I've actually helped a little bit with the Scenic City Invitational, which is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But my involvement there has really been as a hospitality guy. I've never been involved in the booking or the finding the talent or any of that aspect of it. I've always just been a guy that was kind of like the Pied Piper of the SCI, telling people what a great opportunity it was to see great wrestling, and then people would come in, and then I tried to kind of host them to a lot of different things here in Chattanooga. But I began to think a couple of years ago about trying to do an event myself, and the idea essentially came from the fact that for the past 3 or 3.5 years, having watched so much great wrestling, I was actually totally taken aback and surprised by how great women's wrestling has become, because I had been out of the loop of seeing a lot of shows until after I had to retire because of my health. When I went up the road and I began seeing shows all over the seat of my pants about how great women's wrestling was, and it didn't seem to be getting that much ink or that much attention, because I don't think it had moved as far as it has recently moved, and it will continue to move in the future. So I thought, well, this is something I would love to bring into my area, the Tennessee area. And there's so many great women, and they're getting more and more good women. So the idea kind of sprung from that. And then working with a friend of mine, Jeremy Snyder, who goes by Making Towns Guy on Twitter, he'd been wanting to do that as well. So we came up with the idea of having that tournament with just women's wrestlers and seeing if we could provide a showcase in the center of the South in Tennessee for people to see how great women have become, and provide an opportunity for the wrestlers and also for the fans. And my goal is for the Making Towns Classic to be really a fan-centered and fan-oriented event, much like the Scenic City Invitational, the SCI is. In other words, I want people, there's a lot of people coming in from out of town. I want people to be able to talk with each other, to share their stories about great wrestling stories that they have, to make contacts and friends and build relationships that will help to further the industry over time. So I want it to be very much centered on fans as well as the women, and interactions between the wrestlers and the fans. So that's kind of where that idea sprung up from.
So you had this idea and it seems like you got the right reasons. It's your first show. So how do you take this idea from paper and how do you put it into action? What are some of the challenges that you had to face initially setting up that show?
Well, there's a lot of challenges. The more I get into it, the more I see there's plenty of challenges. We added a third partner to our group, which is Brittany Fernandez, who works with Kick Out at 2 podcast in Nashville, Tennessee, and works with the Southern Underground Pro promotion there, because she's Nashville-based. She has a lot of connections up there, and we felt like we needed that. I'm in Chattanooga, which is about 100 miles away, but we want somebody on site. So we had to, of course, find a venue. That took a good while. We wanted to find a place that maybe had some history, that people were familiar with, that had seen wrestling there before, that was going to be a kind of a beacon and a great place to hold the event. So that was one particular task that had to be undertaken, and we ended up getting a sports arena at the fairgrounds, which is a legendary wrestling venue, so we're really happy about that. So getting those venue situations worked out, and there's a lot of issues there, how it's going to be set up. You have to have insurance, so on and so forth. Then you have to seek out and find a graphic artist, because the graphic artist has to put out the word on social media who's coming into your tournament, and so on and so forth, and do the artwork for that, plus posters, all of that. Then you've got your social media presence, Facebook, Twitter, and other, reaching out to other podcasts like yourself, and local media in Nashville and Tennessee area. So those are all tasks that have to be undertaken. Then there's setting up a method for purchasing and tickets and selling tickets. Then you also have to work on sponsors, having good relationships with people, building sponsors that are willing to take a risk and support women's wrestling, and that takes time. And we have tried to be very careful in who we've chosen as our sponsors. We have a number, but I've actually had to turn a few folks down because they didn't meet kind of what our objective was for the tournament. So those are all parts of it. But I guess the biggest task is gathering the talent that's necessary to put on such a show. Now, Jeremy and myself have been to probably, I'm guessing, maybe 150 shows or more each. So we had a lot of live show experience in the last 3 or 3.5 years. As a result, we know all of the talent personally that's going to be in the show. We've reached out to each and every person that's on the show. We've seen everybody that's going to be in our tournament live, at least most of them many, many times. And because we had that experience of going out and traveling and going to so many shows, we were able to get together and make a judgment about who we wanted in the show. And we put together what we think is a fantastic field. It's a very diverse field. And it's just, I think, going to be a great, great tournament. And that experience of traveling around all over the country, everywhere from the Northeast, out the West Coast and every place in between has given us that exposure to the talent. So we had a lot of people that we could choose from. We whittled it down to 16, and we've got a list of several others that wanted in. We just weren't able to get them in. But if this event goes well, and we expect that it will, we'll probably have some follow-up events. And when we do, we'll bring in some of the other ladies that we weren't able to get on this particular show, and we'll be bringing some people back, and hopefully we can build a positive, solid brand that continues to support and tell the story of how great women's wrestling is.
And that's definitely awesome. And the one thing I wanted to take note of, especially with you in your preparation, even a year out, you had already planted the seeds with your social media. How important do you think that was, getting the word out early and getting it in everybody's mind that this is happening?
I think it was real important for us because I don't have any experience. Now, Jeremy has run a few shows, but I don't have any experience promoting. So I thought it's extremely important to get that word out, to let people know where it was going to be, what it entails, let people know who the performers are, because it's important to establish credibility. Integrity is extremely important to me. If I say there's going to be a tournament in Nashville on May the 12th, and there's going to be 16 great women wrestlers, it's going to happen. Now, there have been a number of cases where promotions have fallen through, or promises have not been kept by promoters, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And that's just not acceptable to me. I think integrity is so important. If you say you're going to have a tournament, then you do the best that you can to build up and make the best tournament that you can make, which is exactly what we've done. Now, I can't tell you at this point whether or not it's going to be a financial success or not. I hope it will be, because if it's not going to be, then I'm just going to cost me some money. But that's okay. I mean, if I amount to savings and make up the difference of what I don't get in ticket sales or sponsors or whatever, I'm prepared to do that. But what I'm not prepared to do is go back on the agreements that I've made to the talent of the fans. That has to be kept, and it will be kept. And I actually have a very strong opinion that we're going to be financially successful, so I feel good about it. Just think that there needs to be more integrity in this business, especially in independent wrestling. There's been too much shadiness on the part of promoters. I am not happy when I see talent move from place to place. When I see a talent that's committed to be on a show and then they drop that commitment and turn up on another show, that doesn't make me happy. I think everyone should live up to their word.
It's the most important thing, not even just in professional wrestling, but life. It's a lost art. People don't really care too much about their word anymore, but it's good that you have that, because that's good for the fans to hear as well as for the talent, because I got to imagine, talent having to deal with promoters, canceling at the last moment and not giving them a safe and secure environment. It's got to be hard when, that's how you're trying to earn a living.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to, try and take advantage of opportunities, but following up on commitments is a little more important.
Oh, you always want to follow up on your opportunities, and I understand that certain emergency situations might come up where talent might have to be pulled. Like if someone suddenly gets signed to WWE and they show up this week, I'm not going to have a heart attack about that, because I think that's a legit, makes sense. But on the other hand, there's a lot of times that things happen that don't have to happen, and I think that promoters and talent should make every possible effort to live up to their word and their commitments. I just feel very strongly about that.
I definitely agree 100%. It's something we try to do here at the show. That's pretty much the only thing. If we say we're going to do something, we better do it, because I don't want to deal with social media or anybody saying that, we don't do...
Whoa, slow down. Who on social media is going to get at you about us not following? Come on.
Well, social media, believe me, they'll come after you. They've come after me plenty of times. I recognize that things happen. And anytime you got a big tournament like I got 16 people, and I've been involved in helping promote the SCI, but not actually with the bookings or that type of thing. But from a hospitality standpoint, every year there have been certain changes that have come down because of injuries, or because of a travel situation that was unanticipated, or, a family emergency. Things can happen that will cause the field to change. We all recognize that. And fortunately, I have a very great diverse field. I'm not, what happens in my tournament is not going to be 100% dependent on every single individual. While I expect everyone to be there, if something were to happen, I've got a list and a group of people that would love to fill in, and I have 100% confidence it's going to be a great experience experience for everyone. And my expectation is the field will stay the way it is.
And you're absolutely right. Like we said, anything can happen in life. And what you also mentioned earlier, the field itself being very diverse and everything. So kind of for our listeners, run down some of the people that they're going to be able to see at the Making Towns Classic. That's a good.
I'm not sure I can even remember all of them.
That's why I asked you.
It's like an unhinged segment in the middle of the show.
But I'll just mention a couple that have just, some of them that people may not be aware of, especially, and then I'll bring in some of the bigger stars. But Savannah Stone, who is a great young talent. She's 17 years old. She'll be 18, I believe, next week, maybe on Valentine's Day. She actually wrestled Nia Jax on Raw this Monday night. So she will be in the tournament. And she's been kind of tearing it up on some of the Midwest indies. So she's a young gal that people may not be familiar with, but I was totally ecstatic that she was 17 years old and she's already been on a Raw match. And Kylie Ray has been wonderful in matches from the West Coast up to the Midwest area, and she's getting more and more known. Just an amazing performer down in Texas as well. And Kylie, we just announced, is going to have a WWE tryout coming very soon. So those are two that are, I think, real exciting that people may not be that familiar with. Some of the ones that people in your neck of the woods probably would be familiar with would be Jordan Grace, who's a wonderful talent, great wrestler, a lot of physical ability, extremely strong up there. Penelope Ford is up in that area too, close to where you guys are. Faye Jackson, then my goodness, Isla Dawn, Samantha Hout, Sue Young, Delilah Doom, Aja Super Ferreira, who's a great young talent, Hudson Envy. Those are just a few that I can recall offhand, and I'm probably leaving people out. Veda Scott, I'm sure I've left somebody out, but I mentioned a few. I hope that helps.
I've had an opportunity to catch a few of them in the ring, and like you said, this is going to be a stellar tournament. You got a lot of talent in the ring. Not all the same style of wrestling. You're going to see diversity. You're going to get to see different storylines. And I think for somebody who maybe has never had an opportunity to see something like this before, this is the perfect place to start and open your eyes up to women's wrestling.
Oh, I think it's absolutely going to be a prime opportunity for someone who maybe is not familiar with it to get out and watch it and really enjoy it. And our plan is to develop a really good story with several of the wrestlers. And as I said, going down the road, we hope to have some follow-up events and maybe further some of these storylines. But just really excited about the field. We've got just great diversity in terms of all kinds of talents. We've got very powerful heels and baby faces, and just a great combination of talent and stories and characters. So I think it's going to be something that people will really love, really enjoy.
Definitely, and I mean we are ready. We are preparing ourselves to make I believe it's a 14-hour drive from Binghamton, New York to Tennessee, so it's definitely going to be a fun time. They won't let me videotape the whole ride down, though. They already put the stop on that.
You're going to have to pick your spots for videotaping on the way down.
No, we'll just avoid the camera at all costs. I don't need to be on there.
He's not a fan of the cameras.
My face doesn't need to be on the internet any more than it already is.
You guys upstate New York guys have a little ways to travel to get to Nashville.
It's going to be a road trip, though. It's going to be fun.
I've made the trek a few times.
Well, there's actually a charter bus that's coming to the tournament from Washington, D.C. that's leaving after the Nova Pro show on the 11th and driving all night.
That should probably be a pretty fun bus ride for anybody on there.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be fun, and there's going to be some talent on that bus, too.
It's going to be a real fun bus ride.
Oh, yeah. I told the talent, I said, you guys can sell some merch while you travel.
I'm sure everybody on the bus will be getting off it wearing their shirts.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely I'm a fan of road trips, and it's been a couple years since I've taken a road trip, so I don't have to drive, which is the plus of it all. I'm just paying for the gas, so.
I'm pretty sure Matt has left New York State a total of like 3 times in his whole entire life.
Probably like 10.
How Pennsylvania doesn't count.
No, I'm not counting like driving down to Pennsylvania to get cheap cigarettes.
Yeah, well, that's different.
If that's the case, I've left New York like a million times and paid more in gas than it probably would have cost me just to buy them down the road.
Okay, in the last 10 years.
All right, 10 years. Well,
Once.
no.
Was
Couple
that even
times.
10 years ago? That
it was
might
less than
have
10
been
years
South
ago.
Carolina.
Yeah,
That's the last time I remember you ever not being home.
So where'd you go down in South Carolina?
we went. Oh, where did I go? Myrtle Beach. Yeah, we went down.
Myrtle Beach. Times I lived in Charleston for 20 years. So
Yeah, we went golfing for 3 days on the off season, so we got to play some of the PGA courses for like $20. It's pretty nice. First time I ever went golfing.
yeah, there's a lot of golf courses there in Myrtle Beach. I played on many of them.
I fell in love with golf, but I haven't gotten much better in the 5 years that I've been playing it.
How are you?
I think I've gotten progressively worse.
I'm terrible. I never was any good, but I just enjoy being on.
It is fun.
It's just that's what it comes down to. It's just the experience. I just get exhausted after like 4 holes, and I want to go back to the clubhouse. I'm like, all right, this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah, I can never go like more than once a summer. No, last year I didn't go that much, but
No.
past years before that, you and me were going like every weekend. We're getting pretty decent too.
I'd have one good hole, and then it would all go downhill from there.
Yeah.
I thought I figured it out, and then golf would throw me a
Yep.
loop. Golf might be harder than professional wrestling. I mean,
It is probably.
Not as taxing on the body, but yeah, it's got a lot of skill involved.
it might be way more frustrating too. Now, you kind of touched on this earlier, the long-term goals of the Making Towns Classic. Is this something you kind of want to do yearly with the tournament? Keep it going, new winner every year?
Our goal is to do it every year. This is our first year is going to be kind of the setting the agenda for what we expect, what we want to happen. We want it to, as I said, to be a very fan-centered, positive environment, really a showcase for women's wrestling. And the name Making Towns Classic really kind of came from a story that I had written a couple of years ago called Making Towns. Before my world goes dark, losing my vision and having to retire from teaching, I just kind of wrote that story to kind of tell my journey in wrestling. So that's kind of where the name came from. But as the name implies, I've done a lot of making towns. I've been all over the country, and Jeremy Snyder has too in the last 3 or 4 years. So we want the tournament to rotate around. I'm looking at a couple of other potential different new locations next year. So it may be the tournament will retain itself, but it'll be in a different location. We haven't made the final judgment on that, but that's kind of our goal. And we will see how we do financially. My expectation is we're going to do well. But again, I won't know until, all the people file through the door and we've got all our sponsors and everything is said and done, then we'll know. We're making decisions right now about how we're going to present the show to the outside world or the audience. We're going to make a decision whether we're going to try to live stream it or whether we're going to maybe let it be purchased later. It will be filmed. It will be videotaped. We'll probably have DVD. We'll see. We're actually still not 100% certain exactly how we're going to handle the stream of the show, whether we're going to have a live stream or whether we just have it taped and then videos and whatnot come out later.
There's a lot of different ways you can go. The one thing with the live stream is, even if you do something free like Twitch, you do have the ability to expose yourself to a whole audience that may not have seen it.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for the live stream.
Right. We have some connections. I know a lot of people at High Spots, and I know the people at Television TV very my son Dylan works for them. So, we're looking at what our options are and trying to make a decision. We haven't made a final decision. We will within the next probably 2 or 3 weeks.
All right, we look forward to hearing that. And if people want to stay up to date and, such as if there's going to be a stream or something like that, how do they follow you guys on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me at Papa Hales at Mike Hales 9, and then you can follow Jeremy at Making Towns Guy. Then you can follow the Making Towns Classic at the MT Classic.
And what about purchasing tickets? Let's kind of go over what it's going to cost to get into the Making Towns Classic and how people can get their tickets if they want to get them ahead of time before the door.
All right, here's what they can do on tickets. We're in the process of getting tickets printed. We don't have them yet, but I will be actually selling tickets, various shows that I attend, and I've got my receipt pad with me, and I'm just taking orders when I go to shows at this point. I've already sold a number of them. But you can send me a message either by DMing me on Twitter, or you can write send an email to mikehales57@gmail.com. The only tickets we've released at this point, we're going to release all our packages here coming up in the next couple of weeks, our front row packages, which we've been selling for $45 for both shows. So a $45 front row package gets you front row to both shows, because we have a 3 o'clock show and a 7:30 show. There's actually 2 shows on the same date at the same venue, which is the Fairground Sports Arena in Nashville on May the 12th. So $45 will get you front row seat for both shows. That package will go up to $50 here in the next couple of weeks. Then the second row package will be $40. The third row will be $30. So we're going to have 3 rows, and then the rest will be GA. It's going to be $20 for GA, and that will be for both shows.
Quite a deal.
I'm sitting here a little shocked. I mean, for the level of talent that you guys are providing, you're getting 2 shows for $45 front row. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah, the prices are very, very reasonable. We try to keep them as reasonable as possible. And as I said, even if you can't go first row, you can go to third row is $30, very close to the front. That's $15 a show to see some of the best talent in indie wrestling. I think it's a pretty damn good deal.
And then just general admission, $20 for a wrestling festival. Sounds amazing.
Now we will have some meet and greet before each show too. That will be a little bit, but we haven't discussed how much that's going to be. It won't be extremely heavy. It'll be probably $15 per show, and we'll have several of the stars out there. You'll be able to go in and get a picture and talk to them and get some extra time with them. So we'll have those packages too.
I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier in the episode. You're really, I mean, if you look at the price and what you're offering with the whole fan experience, building connections, having those moments, giving them the time with the talent as well. I mean, you're really trying to live up to what you're saying. So, I mean, anybody out there listening, you can't go wrong if you go to this show.
Yeah, and as a fan, I mean, the meet and greet, don't just think of that as you get to meet the wrestler. Think of that as you're directly supporting the underground indie wrestling.
Oh, absolutely, because that's one reason that we're able to put this on, is that we've had the opportunity. We've been in meet and greets at a lot of shows ourselves where we bought tickets and we've got to meet these wrestlers. And that's how we've been able to strike up relationships with them, is at the meet and greets. Because typically at a show, as you know, I know you guys have been to shows, the wrestlers may come out before or after at various times, but it's hard to catch everybody. They may not be able to be out there long. Some wrestlers may not come out at all. So it's kind of hit or miss. So it's nice to have a meet and greet.
Yeah, they do them at our local promotion here at Excite, and I can say the fans, it's something that they look forward to, and they're willing to pay for it, and it's something that they get to keep forever. They get a picture. They were there at the show. I mean, who's not going to love that?
Right. But they can actually, anyone that's interested in a front row package, I still have, I've actually sold a lot of front row packages already, but I still have a good number of them left. If they will, they can PayPal me the $45. My PayPal address is the same as the Gmail address I just gave you, mikehales57@gmail.com. If they're interested in the front row package, I still have them available. They can PayPal me $45. Just make sure they put the name they want the ticket held in on their order when they PayPal me the number.
All right, perfect. And when we put this up on our website, we'll make sure to include that. Papa, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to coming down to Tennessee and getting the opportunity to see 16 of the best women in professional wrestling. I mean, we've talked about it for the last few weeks, really hoping that we can do our best to support you guys, and we hope that it's a huge success for you guys.
Well, thank you so much. We're really excited about it. We're just really now gearing up. I mean, we've been talking about it. Last 2 folks in the field will be announced next week, by the way. You can put that on your the last 2 entrants will be announced next week, and I think they're going to be pretty cool. People will be excited, I think.
I will definitely make sure to keep an eye out for that and make sure we get retweets out there and make sure everybody follows us, is aware of what's going on.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, anytime you can need anything, you've helped us out in the past. We're here for you guys 100%. We love everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and a big thank you to Papa Hales Bats. I'm excited for the Making Talent Classic. What about you?
Yeah, man. It should be a real good time. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a wrestling festival. It's gonna be great.
It's going to be a good time, and hopefully for anybody who can't make it, they are streaming it in some platform or another, and they'll let you know soon on social media, so make sure you give them a follow. And guys, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasting fix from. And you can find us on social media as well. We are on Twitter at @gimmick_table, Facebook and Instagram as well. Just search the Gimmick Table Wrestling Podcast. And you can go to gimmicktablepod.com for all our interviews, cover art, and contests. Like we said last week, we got a contest going right now, and we also said it earlier in the show, $30 gift card to ProWrestlingTees.com just for supporting our friends at the 607 Strong Academy. Again, for your chance to win, you just got to go to gimmicktablepod.com/contest for all the details. And we got more friends for them to support, Bats. Our good old friends. They've been there since the beginning.
What are you talking about? The PWO?
Yeah, man. Why are you so surprised by this? The podcasting world, are our friends there? You know, support our friends. That's what you're supposed to do when you're friends. Maybe you should learn that and be a better friend to me.
Did you not see me sitting here across from the table, listening to you talk to yourself?
Unfortunately. And guys, all our friends, listen to them talk to themselves in front of microphones. They're available on all major platforms, including iTunes and Google Play. They're the WNA podcast, the Wretched Wrestling podcast. We got the Smart Spot podcast, your favorite. Who's that?
Raw is more.
That was terrible. And we got the Broadcast all the way from Australia. And we're just going to end this calamity of an outro to the show. We'll be back next week, everybody, with another interview for your listening pleasure. Stay safe and have a good week.
See ya.